Hello and welcome to a video with me, Raindell. Today I want to talk about a topic that I think is pretty important, and it's spending on gacha games and then War of the Vision in general. A couple months ago, I did a video on dealing with fear of missing out, and I think fear of missing out and spending in gacha games often go hand in hand. And it's important to discuss these things once in a while, so that's what we're going to do today. And disclaimer, I do spend in War of the Vision. I am currently Royal Rank 9, which I just hit during the anniversary. So from my perspective, that's a rather heavy spending, but I know a lot of other content creators and whatnot have higher spendings than I do. And then I do encourage people to spend in because it encourages the game. That's what keeps companies like Gumi running. But there are ways to spend and there are ways not to spend. So yeah, I want to go into that. And then I also want to say I am not a psychologist, I am not a financial advisor or anything. I'm just a gamer sharing his experience and his opinion. So if it resonates with you, good. If it doesn't, well, too bad. I'm doing what I can here. So let's get into it. And first thing I want to talk about is the gacha game model in general. It's an interesting game model, really. We get games that constantly evolve. We get new updates every week, new units, new content to challenge, new equipment, new things to farm. So these are games that we can't really get clear. We can't get tired of them because we always get new stuff. So as long as you're not bored of the concept of the game, you're always going to have something to do. And that has some value. But on the other hand, you can never complete the game, and there's never you can never have everything in the game and then be done with it, right? Because there's always new stuff going, and the price that it would take to have every single unit and every single piece of equipment and just everything in the game maxed out is a really high price tag, because these games are not designed for completionists and people that have everything. They're designed to constantly give people something to strive towards. And that's something interesting, because I had people comment on my FOMO video about the fact that strategy game players and players that have played Final Fantasy Tactics and then a lot of the games that are similar to War of the Vision are typically players that are completionists, and they're used to clearing 100% of games. I know I am. So it's kind of a challenge playing a game like War of the Vision and figuring out that we are not going to have 100% completion in the game, because that's not the way it's designed. So we need to keep that in mind going into it. And so one thing I want to say as well, when spending in Gacha, I like to compare spending in Gacha to being in front of a giant pit. It's a big hole and it's very deep, and when you look down the hole you can see new units, new equipment, new vision cards, and all the goodies that you could get if you were spending. But if you just look at whatever you want, try to aim your jump and jump down the hole, well, you might end up falling deeper than you'd expect, and you might end up hitting the bottom as well, which is not what you want. So when you have a goal of and you begin spending in those games, it's better to build a ladder beforehand, or tie a rope around your waist so that you don't go too deep and that you land near what you're actually targeting, rather than just going in blind. And I'll be discussing some of those tools that can be your ropes or ladders a little bit later. But first, let's talk about what you actually get when you're spending in gacha games. And I think it's really two things. The first thing you can get is growth acceleration. So these games are designed to give you opportunities to keep growing your account. We're getting shards every day, we're getting shops, shards that come in the shop, we're getting new units, free viz. There's a lot of goodies that are handed out to us, and then everything we can get through the events. So naturally, somebody who spends some time in the game and plays as a free-to-play will grow. What paying users get is opportunities to grow more easily and grow faster. So that's the first thing. And then the other thing you can get when you're spending is making sure that you actually land the time-limited stuff when it's there. So if you tried pulling for Yuna and you missed her, well, you can decide to spend some money, get some more viz, and then pull some more, and then make sure that you actually get her. So these are really the two things that you can get when you're spending, and you're not going to get a much different experience. You're either growing faster or making sure you land time-limited stuff. That's it. And with that, Cabbage recently made a video that I found super interesting about the experiences difference between a free-to-play user and a paying user. And I think it's interesting. What he said is free-to-plays have to leverage their intelligence, like their way to get the most out of their limited resources and have a good performance out of them. While pay users and whales, as he was putting it, I think, have a different experience where they don't necessarily have to make the best use of their limited resources, but instead they can use their imagination and come up with different solutions using different team and different vision cards to tackle specific challenges. So it's a different kind of experience. But overall, I think all of those are fun. Like I say, I'm spending and I'm having fun with it. But for example, my girlfriend has a free-to-play account and I'm playing with it once in a while, and I'm having a lot of fun trying to find how to use her teams to clear the quests that are much harder for her account than they are for mine, of course. But let's get into my advice if you're intending to spend in the game, how to make sure that you keep it under control and then keep it healthy. The first thing, and I did touch that in my FOMO video, but that's figuring out why you play. Right? Are you playing this game to be competitive? Are you trying to be #1 in the class matches or top 100 arena every month? Or are you just going to casually enjoy the content and your goal is just to be strong enough to keep clearing story missions or the events that we get to try to get through the tower? Like, whatever your objective is, I think it's important to know what that goal is, because if you just spend money, get stronger without a specific goal, you'll never stop. You'll always want what's new. But if you have a goal and you hit it, then you kind of know, okay, I'm strong enough to do what I want out of the game, so I don't need much more than what I currently have. So that's the first thing. And then setting your expectations and your limitations. Limitations on your budget, limitations on how much time you're going to be investing in the game. And then, in line with why you play, setting your expectations. Are you planning to be in top PvP all the time? I think that's the main area where people need to spend a lot, because since there are people who always have the newer and stronger stuff, if you want to compete with them, you sometimes feel like you have to have those same things that they do. So yeah, set your expectations and set your limitations before spending. And then the third thing is something that I find few people actually do, and that's count your spendings. How much did you invest in the game? If you're doing daily purchases and once in a while getting a bigger pack, well, all these spendings do rack up and come to a sizable amount. And I think if you're not counting how much you spend, this amount might be larger than you realize. So it's definitely something to take in mind. So I advise, if you want to make sure that you don't spend too much, do count your spendings, but counting your spending has the side effect that it might reduce your pleasure from the game if you realize you're spending more than you want to. So keep that in mind. It can be a double-edged sword. The next one is probably the most important in my opinion, and it is don't gamble. I have a policy where when I spend paid viz, I will never spend it on a chance at getting what I want. I am fine with paying a paid step up, for example, where the unit I want is guaranteed in the end, or unit of choice tickets, or just generally goodies in the game that I know what I'm getting out of. I'm fine with spending paid viz for all of that, but when it comes to spending money to get some viz and then using that viz on Gatcha and having a chance at getting the unit I want, that's the fine line between gaming and then paying for a better game experience, and then gambling altogether. The second you start translating real money into polls and then having only a chance at landing what you get, that's the second, in my opinion, where your gaming experience becomes gambling, and that's not healthy. A lot of people struggle with gambling issues, and it's very serious. So make sure that you, I guess it's part of setting your limitations, but this is my limitation, and I strongly advise people to have a similar limitation themselves if they don't want to go down the rabbit hole of spending to pull. And then I guess the final thing I like doing is counting how much enjoyment am I getting out of the game in terms of hours versus how much I'm spending. If I'm buying an $80 game and I'm playing it for 3 hours, it's pretty expensive of a game. But if I'm buying the same game and then playing it for 100 hours, that's actually 80 cents per hour of enjoyment, and I'm fine with that, right? So I do the same with games like War of the Vision. So if I know in War of the Vision, not counting farming because that's not really enjoyment, I enjoy arena, guild battles, and then all the content and events that I do manually. So with all that, I have an hour to an hour and a half of fun every day thanks to the game. With this in mind, paying the daily purchase, for example, that costs me $1 is fine with me because I'm paying basically 1 hour for $1 for 1 hour of enjoyment, which is a really good ratio. And then I think it's a good way to make sure that you're not spending a really large amount of money on something that you don't get that much enjoyment out of in the end. But yeah, that's it. I don't want to keep this too long, really, just sharing my thoughts on a topic that I think is a pretty sensitive topic. Generally, there is kind of a perception that whales are unfair players or that they have an unfair advantage. But the reality is, if people don't spend and invest in the game will close. This is a company, they are there to make money. So we need some people to actually pay for the game to run. And in that sense, thank you to everybody who's spent in the game. But if you're free to play, don't feel bad. The game is designed with a free to play model. You can actually play. And if they didn't want that, they should just make the game be paid. So that's it. If you guys feel like spending, go ahead, but do it reasonably. And if you don't feel like spending, then good for you. You'll have money for other stuff that you enjoy. So yeah, that's it. If you guys enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It will make it more likely that you see my content in the future. And then as always, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.